Hi, I'm Susan Lewis from WRTI, and this is Time In. I'm here with Donald Nally. He's the founder and conductor of The Crossing. He's also the director of choral organizations at Northwestern University. Hi, Donald.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to be here.
Where are you zooming in from?
I am in my studio at Northwestern in Evanston, Illinois.
And you also live in Philadelphia because The Crossing, the Grammy-winning choir, is based in Philadelphia, right?
It is. In fact, I just rented a new apartment with my partner in Mount Airy, and we are really excited.
Wow. Well, that's great. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Where were you in March of 2020, and how did things evolve for you when everything started to shut down?
Well, for like a lot of people, it was like, just watching a house that was on fire and too far to go. Eventually the whole thing was going to collapse, and you knew that. So we did knee plays, which was arrangements of David Byrne and Philip Glass at the Annenberg Center, third weekend of February. And then I came back and was teaching, and that was, the first and second week of March, where everybody was going like, there's this thing that's going to happen. And then Stephen, my husband, was in Wichita seeing after his parents. He flew back on March 12th. And it was just like around March 11th that people started going, you got to wear a mask, you have to sanitize everything. Everything went crazy, and then on March 13th, that was the last day of the quarter here at Northwestern. And we were supposed to fly out on that day to come out there because The Crossing had a Michael Gordon premiere at Carnegie Hall and at the Annenberg Center. And we also were going to do a concert at Westminster Choir College because they were in their last months on the Princeton campus before they moved to Lawrenceville. First Westminster got canceled, and then Annenberg got canceled. And so we kind of went, all right, we're not going to leave. We're going to press pause. Let's see what happens. And then 24 hours later, Carnegie Hall got canceled. And then that was it. We all went into hibernation for as long as we did.
Right. What was your life like before the pandemic in terms of juggling all of your activities, and where did you spend most of your time?
So we really do split it between the two of them. We own a little condo here, and so I like to say, like, our couch is here, but we do go back and forth. And you asked me what life was like. Well, we have a rhythm about traveling that, I come to school and teach, and at the end of the day, take my knapsack with my laptop in it to the airport and get on a plane and fly there and walk into our apartment there at 1 a.m, and then back up at 8 and go to rehearsal with The Crossing. So the reason I mentioned it that way is because it became so obvious to us that was the rhythm of our life. About 2 or 3 months into it, I went, wow, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I miss the routine of like going to the airport and having a drink in the United Lounge and get on the airplane and, believe it or not. So
what does Stephen do?
He sings in The Crossing. He's a baritone. He sings professionally, sings in some choirs here in Chicago and around. He's a choral musician.
Well, that's great, because then a lot of your activity running back and forth is together.
It really is, actually. I'm not a terribly self-sufficient person, so it works out really wonderfully. And
so when things shut down, what was your life like? What did you do? How did you react?
Oh, boy, how many times do you ask that question and the person starts to cry? Because I think so many of us went through this thing in our brain that was going, this isn't happening, this isn't happening. Even though on the outside, we were like, no, we're going to be fine. But just little things like going for a jog or run seemed monumental. There's a certain number of categories there, right? So first of all, there's the home part of it. we're going to be here a while. What does that mean for our relationship, right? You know, I mean, how many people do we know that their relationships didn't make it through this? And then how many people do we know that their relationships really grew stronger as a result of it? You know, and I'm fortunate enough to feel like that we fit into the latter category. I hope he would say the same thing. But then the other categories required an enormous amount of work. What am I going to do with my students? We're singers. That's the worst thing. That's like, you know, everybody says on the news, absolutely no singing ever. For the Crossing and for Northwestern, I mean, that's all we do. So I go into this mode of, well, how do we serve our constituencies, the closest constituencies, right? So the first thing we did was try to figure out how to pay the singers for the things that were canceled. And we did continue through the summer doing that, and had some very, very generous supporters who had already supported many things for the season, but came to us and said, what do you need to make sure that no one's health is at risk and that you have a choir when you come back? We didn't know it wouldn't be until, you know, this summer or later. And so that was A. B, how do we communicate, and how do we figure out ways to make art and give singers work and meaning? Right away, we turned around and started 3 days later, a replacement for what our concerts would have been. So we started this thing called Rising with the Crossing, and it was an email every morning for, well, I was going to do it for 2 weeks. And it turned out to be first a series of 12 weeks, Monday through Friday at sunrise. That's why it's called Rising with the Crossing. It was at sunrise every morning. And then we took a break for a month, and then we came back and did it once a week. They were all about us live, captured in the past, and sharing a live performance, even though we couldn't be live, with our audience. And it turned out to be really quite, I won't say popular, right? Like we're a choir. But it turned out to be quite successful, and gained a lot of attention, which we didn't really intend. I mean, I just thought this was a way of communicating, right? It wound up that the Library of Congress archived the whole series as a significant historical record. And then we made a CD this December. There were 72 entries of Rising with the Crossing. 12 of the pieces that were featured there, we put onto a CD, which also had a measure of success. And then there was university, and I didn't know what to do, right? Because we couldn't get together and sing. Students are all going to be on Zoom, you know. So for the first quarter there, the spring quarter, I had 10 composers come, and I interviewed them on Zoom, and it was like Julie Wolfe and Caroline Shaw and David Lang and Ted Hearn and Edie Hill and Eric Session-Volz, and we had these nice conversations. And in the week prior to that, the students did a lot of listening and a little bit of reading to get ready for that. And anyway, and then that thrust us out into the summer, but then we began to make pieces.
Well, I thought it was astonishing that Rising with the Crossing started on March 16th. And it wasn't just posting individual pieces, because each one is accompanied by your reflections about the piece.
Yeah.
And about the relevance of it as you go forward. I mean, that's something that requires thought and introspection, I guess.
Yeah. I started out writing them daily, which was a big mistake, because it caused a lot of tension about like getting the next day's done. So then after about a week, I decided, okay, I'm going to have to take Saturday. And it took me about a day and a half to write the week's worth of, because there was this catchphrase in there, we really love singing. And every one of them talked about why we love singing that piece, or why we love singing that concert, or whatever, or some reflection about like what it is that made me choose that piece, because we really love singing together. And the whole thing again was singer centric. It was about I mean, my heart was broken. A lot of singers in the crossing, they make their career from singing professionally between the opera chorus and crossing and church choir and whatever, some teaching singing or whatever like that. Everything went away overnight.
Did that process for you of chronicling your thoughts as the weeks went by and as this time grew longer and longer, did that help you process it?
Yeah. Yes. It did. It also was very emotional at times. Listening to many, many, many recordings and then choosing 5 for that week. Listening to years and years and years of us singing, and I didn't realize the levels that sometimes that they reach, or the energy or the commitment or whatever. I mean, I realized it in the moment, but I forget about it, and I found that very moving. But I also, I'll admit to you that the process also led me down a path, an unexpected path of really becoming deflated, which is why we finally stopped after 12 weeks. And I just said, I need a break. I can't just listen to myself conduct I can't do it anymore. And in the meantime, we were making these animated films with, we compiled a piece that David Lang had written about the pandemic, protect yourself from infection. So we, that didn't actually exist as a piece of music. It was intended for a parade. We made a full, coherent 7-minute piece of music out of it. We had an animated film, and then we made another animated film to a Michael Gordon movement. And I'm like, well, finally, what are we going to do? This isn't sustainable. And I got really down. And then I went to the ocean and I listened to the ocean talk to me, because that's what people have done for as long as people have written about walking by the ocean, and gained some clarity about my own emotional situation, and came up with this idea that we should create a sound system where we can sing outside and isolated and safely distant. And it should be a sound system where every singer keeps it with themselves in their car. They carry it by themselves. They set it up. It's battery operated. There's no power needed. You don't need to come within 25 feet of each other. And so Paul Vasquez and Kevin Vondrak, Paul was our sound designer, Kevin Vondrak, our assistant conductor, designed this whole thing. And then Jonathan Bradley and Shannon McMahon, who are our executive director and operations manager, figured out how to get, order all this stuff. And then we had, again, an amazing benefactor, a very good friend of ours who actually did pass from COVID in October. So we did new commissions for this equipment, and we wanted to respond to the social uprising that was going on.
So I've watched some of these works, that Robert Maggio's Democracy.
Yeah.
And Ayanna Wood's Shift. Both of those filmed in a field. In each of these pieces, each singer has a bag at his or her feet.
Right. So they carry everything with them. So what they're responsible for is a big woofer. It's a sizable bass. It's not all that heavy, and that's that's the battery as well. And then there's a 6-foot pillar speaker, very thin, which part of that was because we wanted to make this piece called The Forest, and this sort of attenuation of a forest and the attenuation of a speaker and the attenuation of a person all being this kind of vertical thing was important to me. And then they carry a knapsack, and in the knapsack is a mixer, which boosts their signal, a looper, so that they can do pieces where they sing with themselves, so that they can create their own harmonic cloud in their area of the piece, or they can repeat things over and over and over on a loop. There's lots and lots of different possibilities, and we're still just kind of figuring out what the advantages to all of that. And then there's an extra battery pack for a looper, and then there's the headset mic and a bunch of cable and etc. And that all of that can be set up in 15 minutes and torn down in less. Singers adapted with extraordinary flexibility. It was amazing because we didn't really have rehearsal. We rehearsed on Zoom a few times, but you can't really sing on Zoom, you know. And then we showed up, we set our equipment out, we like tested it all, we played with the sound, and we like went, all right, go.
So how many works did you do this way?
So we did Democracy and we did Ayanna Wood's Shift that way. And then we recorded The Forest, which is about a 25-minute film of the experience. It's a single one-shot film with 410 Media capturing it. Then we also did a few pieces that didn't involve that equipment, and they were recorded one at a time. Nick Klein's She Took His Hands. We had 4 pre-election films that we made, and that was one of them. And the other one was David Lang's Stateless. And then with the first piece that we did was August 1st, and it was to take the place of our residency in Big Sky, Montana. We projected this film that friends in Montana had taken of the Gallatin River, which is right there in Big Sky. And we projected this enormous, like, I don't know, it's like 80 feet by 30 feet wall of the Gallatin River, with us standing one by one in front of this enormously blown up live, you know, with the river is flowing and the clouds are changing the river. And then there were 4 singers in Big Sky who sang live. And so it was a collaboration between Philadelphia and Big Sky, Montana. It really worked out quite well.
Well, is all of this filming, is this something pretty brand new for you all?
Yes and no. I mean, like, it was never my intention to do a one at a time recording and filming anything. And I don't necessarily want to ever do it again. But we had gone the year before, in the summer of 2019, I guess. Yeah. And we made this film called To the West, which is about a 7-minute excerpt from a piece written for Big Sky by Michael Gordon. And so we learned a lot.
That was 2019?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow. So it's really interesting, because a lot of the things you were doing in 2019 seemed, what's the word? Prescient?
Yeah, right. Yeah, if not even a little bit clairvoyant or something, you know.
Yeah.
That protect yourself from infection with the parade, with the Mutter Museum, and Blast Theory from England. That was all a big project put together by them. And then it winds up that the text for that is from a 1918 government pamphlet about protecting yourself from infection.
I know.
From specifically the Spanish influenza.
You've been incredibly busy, and you also released 3 albums in 2020 and 2 so far in 2021. It's pretty amazing. Getting back to you and how you relax. Do you relax? I guess you didn't go through a puzzle phase in the pandemic.
Yeah.
or you didn't go out and buy a rowing machine, or but you did make a comment about going to the ocean. Is that one of the ways that you kind of kick back in pre-pandemic times?
I do. And we have these very wonderful, generous friends from Pennsylvania who have a place down at the Jersey Shore. And so we went down, and as I said, you know, I was at a really bad place. It's very rare that I am feeling that way. I mean, I've been in therapy for literally 40 years. And so I know what to do. But boy, you know, I'm sure I share this with the world. That didn't do any good come pandemic time, and your career and your art is taken away. So I just decided down there that I wasn't going to have it taken away. I wasn't going to let the virus decide things for the crossing. So yeah, I do. You know, the ocean has always been really, really important to me. Really, I don't want to say rejuvenating, because I feel like, you know, I just feel like I can go so much deeper into myself there and take the time to do that. And I always read a whole lot of books. I read a lot, and I really feel like, you know, because what we do is storytelling, you know, you know, with my choirs at Northwestern, with my graduate students, with the crossing, you know, that's essentially what we do, is we tell stories. And so reading is a huge part of my life, where work and leisure get a little conflated, if not confused.
Any go-to books that you found helpful in getting through the pandemic?
I don't know, because I got really engaged in books that would relate to the new content of our seasons. There's a book called New Poems of Native Nations that got me onto this like rabbit hole about all these different Native tribes, authors and artists, and then reading a lot of Claudia Rankine. And I would say that I went heavily into reading as a form of research.
So you were working, actually. It's not like reading to unwind, it's reading to engage.
Yes, that's probably a problem, but yes.
Well, I have a question. So you didn't start new, you've been terribly busy, very busy, and you may not have done new activities, new personal activities, but you've actually, I mean, the things you've been doing are incredibly interesting and creative. This last year has changed so many of us in the way either the way we behave or the way we think about our lives. Did you have any epiphanies about going forward?
Yes. And to be honest, they've caused a little frustration. I'll tell you, I was talking earlier with Jonathan, our executive director, and he said, "What are you constantly going to tell Susan Lewis about like what you do for leisure time? Because what do you do?" And I said, like, I spend time with Stephen later in the evening. We have a drink or two, and and I read and that kind of stuff, but I don't know, I like what I do, right? I like to study music. It makes me happy. I would say that yes, and as I was saying, it's maybe caused a little bit of frustration in recent months, because one of the things that I have learned is that I don't have time to have my time wasted. And that I don't mean like I don't have time from day to day. I don't have time from now until the end of this life, because this life could end in 3 or 4 days, as we saw happen over and over again, in a shocking way, right? In a like, this can't be real. This friend who is in the hospital and no one can go to see and not even talk to, really, and then they're gone. And I really probably am coming across as a little bit assertive, I would say, about this issue, that I don't want to sit in meetings that aren't actually accomplishing something right here and now. And if not, I'm not going to be a part of it. I don't need to be. Life is just too short.
Right.
So there's that. There's also, like, as I said earlier, I've been profoundly reminded of how fortunate I am that I like everybody. Like, I just live in a dream world. Even people who I find kind of annoying, and we all do, right? There's all people that we do. I like them. They're good people. They have good intentions. I'm very grateful for their being in my life. And by that, I mean for them choosing to be in my life, either as a friend or a relative or whatever. And that's been, and that started at home. That started at home with going like, wow, I really actually like my partner, and I'm good friends with him. And wow, I really like the people that I work with. Really realizing that this kind of like thing that I tell my students all the time: don't spend any time with people that you wouldn't want to go out and have dinner with for a 4 or 5 hour dinner. Don't have them in your choir. Don't have them in your life. Don't. And realizing that I actually live that way. And yeah, so that's like, I don't know, that sounds kind of weird because, it sounds like, oh, I'm so grateful, but I am.
Right. Thanks so much, Donald, for sharing your thoughts about all of these things with us.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I can't say what a pleasure it is. I really appreciate your investment.
I look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon.
Very soon. We're going to be doing our outside performances. The month of moderns is going. Big month of moderns. So
that's great. We look forward to it.